Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode number 88. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here for this Wednesday show. Dave, got a great show for you guys today. You and I will gab a little bit about Steelers news here for the first half hour, and then as we promised, we'll have our Depot Draft Roundtable Senior Bowl edition with Jacob Harrison, Tyler Wise, and Jonathan Heitritter to recap and inform you guys what happened down in Mobile. So they're really excited about today's show.
Absolutely. It should be a fun show, and especially a lot of draft-related content in there. I look forward to learning more about some of these guys you guys got down there and see. I've obviously watched, through some of all 22 film from the practices, but a lot of these guys I still just scratching the surface on trying to learn.
Yeah, for sure. And so those guys will do a good job, I think, informing us and informing everybody else. But Dave, for the here and now, a couple of Steelers-related new pieces of news that aren't related to the draft. And the biggest news that came in yesterday, Steelers hiring a new wide receivers coach. That's Frisman Jackson to replace Ike Hilliard. So they didn't even get the announcement Hilliard was departing, just knew it once they hired his replacement. And so that was a bit of a surprise. According to ESPN, Hilliard's contract was not renewed. Some players reportedly upset about that. It is always difficult to judge positional coaches in the job they do. I understand what element of it is how the players themselves produce, but it is hard to sit there and say because Deontay Johnson dropped a pass or Claypool had some struggles that directly falls on the Ike Hilliard. There can be components of just how you coach and how you drill things and how that translates and just your overall approach in teaching that we don't really get to see. It makes evaluating Hilliard's job tough to do. So I think some people are just trying to say, well, Claypool didn't develop and Johnson faded down the stretch. To me, aren't particularly great reasons for why Hilliard was gone. There's probably more stuff behind the scenes we don't get to see that was the catalyst for his non-renewal. Yeah,
it's funny, after the fact, everybody says, well, that he deserved to go anyway, where were he deserves to go beforehand kind of thing there. Look, we never will know. Now, I will say this, throughout the season, I think Tyler Wise did a good job of weekly kind of breaking down the wide receiver groups. And, man, more than a few times, those guys were missing hot reads and missing just reads in general and those kind of things. And, the blocking later on in the season by some of the guys, was kind of half-ass, if you will. Can you say that on a podcast? I think I just did. But, and then obviously, look, Claypool, if you look statistically, his numbers weren't too far off from, other than touchdowns from his rookie season. But I think when it comes to the eye test, and what you see on tape, now, obviously, he didn't have a quarterback able to put that thing out in front of him 5 yards, on a lot of those balls there. But, I don't think he progressed like many of us thought he might in certain areas there. So now it doesn't matter. Look, this feels like it might be maybe irreconcilable differences to some extent. What I'm getting at here is obviously Ike Hilliard was in place when Matt Canada's first year as quarterback's coach, right? So those guys came in together, if I'm correct there. But it wasn't probably like Matt Canada had a lot of say who the wide receivers coach is. Well, it certainly does feel like Matt Canada had a little bit of say of who the wide receivers coach this time is here. So look, all that's spilt milk now. What has happened the last couple of years, and the team obviously didn't have Juju Smith-Schuster for a lot of the season, and that's a huge component of what happened in that wide receiver room, and why they went the direction they went with Ray McCloud. And why couldn't a guy like Anthony Miller find a way to get himself on the field later in the season? Those were a bit of head scratchers, I think, coming out of the season as well there. So the long and short of it now is the Steelers have a new wide receivers coach.
Yeah, and that is Frisman Jackson, 42 years old, most previously served as the Carolina Panthers receivers coach for the past 2 seasons, developing guys like DJ Moore. Panthers kind of retooling their offensive staff there. Matt Rule wanted to bring in some real firepower, so they brought in Ben McAdoo as their OC, which seems to conflict with that statement. But regardless, a lot of turnover there with the Panthers coaching staff. And so Jackson has a mix of the college game and the pro game. Was with Baylor before. I believe the Panthers job. I've been with the Titans, coaching the college game for the 2010-ish era, somewhere around there. And as you mentioned, Dave has some connections with Matt Canada. They had he had played for Canada at Northern Illinois, and then they coached together at NC State. I think you know the details better than I do about their working relationship.
Yeah, I think when Frisman played, I think Matt Canada was a running backs coach there for a season or two or something like that. And then obviously fast forward to some other time at where were they at there at Northern?
NC State, right? 2013, 2014.
Yeah, NC State and all as well too. And Eddie Faulkner was on that staff as well too. So it's kind of funny when you start peeling back the the layers of the fruit or of the onion, and you kind of find some of these connections that these guys have together. So I don't think we have to worry about them hiring that NC State offensive line coach from back then, because I think he is the Butler head coach right now. And just took the job last season, so I don't think he's going to be the new offensive line.
You never know.
You never know. You never know. But there is a link to once again there is a link to guys Canada and Eddie Faulkner and now Frisman Jackson. Most specifically the NC State years. Sounds like sounds like an album. The NC State years.
And Jackson even worked at Northern Illinois in 2012, and Canada was there, had just left at that point for, I believe, Wisconsin. So maybe there's even some more ties there. Jackson knowing the people that, Canada worked with, and Canada knowing the people that Jackson was working with. So a lot of connections there. So I'm going through some.
It gets it always gets in. What's the word? Incestuous.
Is that the word you want to use?
Well, I mean, just the connections.
Okay.
I mean,
I like to use fraternity.
Okay, well, that term has incestuous, not in the lewd manner, but I think you often hear that term thrown around in coaching circles and all.
Do you?
Yeah, I've heard it. I've heard it before.
Okay, I haven't. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe I'm not reading the same articles, but yeah, there certainly is relationships and fraternity and a bit of the who aspect of it. But that is Jackson a good coach or not? It's hard for us to say. I'm going through some videos and stuff, him preaching about stance and physicality and things like that. All things that a lot of coaches, I'm sure, preach, but we'll just have to wait and see. And again, it is very difficult to evaluate some of those positional coaches, their effectiveness and their overall production, because it's such we're just looking at this so far from the outside.
Right, exactly.
He also played in the NFL too. We should mention that 4 years with the Browns, so there's a NFL experience background. Actually, had a couple of decent games against the Steelers, so a little bit of a. I actually think Keith Butler was on staff whenever Jackson was in Cleveland for his first year. So not that Butler's gone, but it all kind of in a sense comes full circle. So that's the hire there, and as you kind of mentioned, and again, maybe by the time people are listening to this, people know an answer to it. You feel like an O-line coach hire is going to come soon. A lot of hires being made around the league as coaching staffs. Every head coaching vacancy has now been filled. And so teams are really being aggressive and quickly putting together their staffs ahead of free agency and the rest of the offseason. So you'd think that, with this hiring, Pittsburgh is going to be somewhat close to hiring their O-line coach here.
Man, you think by the end of the week, wouldn't you? And that's kind of been my prediction on this, now that they're back from the Senior Bowl and all like that. And is it going to be Mike Munchak? Is it going to be Doug Marrone? I think on the 4th, Doug Marrone was in Syracuse, shown at a basketball game, and did a quick interview and said that he's narrowed it down to like 3 teams, I think, at the time. And that was the 4th. That had been 5 days ago there. you'd have to think that the Steelers are potentially one of those teams that he's probably considering there. Maybe that's what's taking a little bit of time. Maybe they want to see which way Doug Marrone wants to go, but they're not going to wait forever on top of it. They need to get moving on this thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens today, Alex, but we might know all of the moves by the end of the week.
Yeah, I think sooner than later.
And that includes the defensive coordinator job.
Well, that's Terrell Austin. Oh, has that not been made official yet?
It's not been made official yet, right?
That is weird. That was reportedly supposed to happen on Monday. That reportedly over the weekend was going to be made official. But yeah, I mean, how long? How much? What else are they waiting for at this point with Terrell Austin? Just hire the guy, make it official. I mean, my goodness, just sign on the dotted line.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. So, Dave, speaking of Steelers news here, some GM news coming out. We know about some of the external interviews they officially announced last Friday. 2 more to announced over the last 2 days. One name's going to certainly grab more headlines than the other, and it was the first piece of news that came out yesterday. That was Tuesday. Louis Riddick is scheduled to interview for the Steelers GM job, and I'm not surprised by this. In fact, when I wrote about kind of a primer on the GM position, the internal candidates, getting to know Omar Khan, Brandon Hunt, and I wrote about 2 external candidates. Riddick was on that list, and I wrote, I'd be surprised if he didn't get an interview, just given his connections to Pitt, growing up there, his cousin's Tim Lewis, who's worked with the Steelers for a time, and just the general connections and just how well respected Riddick seems to be. So he's reportedly, has not happened yet. They don't believe, but happening very soon. And so, some people will love it, some people will hate it. I certainly don't mind it.
Yeah, look, I mean, you can look back over his background, and obviously the other day during the Pro Bowl had some nice words to say about Mike Tomlin and the Rooney family. The timing of that's kind of unique now that we know what we know now, right? But yeah. Look, he's been out of kind of the circle since 2013 or something like that, I think, right around in there. But hey, you did a good job of drawing the lines of why it wasn't out of the question. Like a guy like him might be considered, and here we are. Now, do I think he's a front runner for the job? I mean, just from an outsider, perspective, and knowing what I think I know, which obviously isn't much in this particular situation and this job. I still have a feeling that this now makes 5 outside or 5 external candidates, and then the 2 internal candidates in Brandon Hunt and Omar Khan. I mean, if you're gambling on this, I think you still think that it still is given to somebody on the inside, that the Steelers are just doing their due diligence to help maybe get some of those names out there, because a lot of them, I think, are minority candidates and all. But look, the Steelers, they said this kind of going back to I was on the radio yesterday, and talking about it as well too. And if you harken back to 2007, everybody said Russ Grimm was going to get that job, and in comes 1 year defensive coordinator Mike Tomlin for the interview, and lo and behold, Dan Rooney and company kept their mind open enough, and ended up Mike Tomlin got the job. So more than anything, maybe we're learning that the Steelers are indeed keeping a very, very open mind about all of these hires here, defensive coordinator and obviously general manager here. So I think if you're a betting man, you're betting on one of the internal guys in Brandon Hunt or Omar Khan. But in the same breath, I don't know how big a bet I'd place on that either, because they are, once again, five external guys at this point. That's quite a number.
Yeah, I think it's smart to cast a wide net when you're doing this process for the first time in 22 years, and you just haven't been down this road, and you just want to be smart and turn over every stone. And plus, you have time. You're not making a hire until May, so it's not like you have to make a hire here super quickly anyway. So you might as well talk to as many people as you can. I still think it'll be tough to go external, just given the timing of it and then happening in the off season, and after the draft, after free agency. That's tough for an outside GM to come in and now work with a roster that was just built by somebody else. Not really got a chance to build your roster until 2023. But yeah, I think I bet Riddick crushes that interview. Just hearing him talk, and the energy and the passion, the intelligence that he brings. I bet he really impresses, Rooney and Tomlin and company in that interview process. And I know that the two knocks on Riddick's going to be he hasn't been in the NFL, in almost a decade. But he working in ESPN and being on Monday Night Football. You're always in production meetings, meeting with teams and coaches, have kind of a unique view because you're always talking to those guys, having access to coaches and players that most people don't normally get. If you're on one team, you don't get to go talk to all other 31 teams and just kind of be able to pick their brain a little bit. So he's still really close to the game. And then B, there's a low-hanging fruit of, look at the draft projection. Riddick loved Solomon Thomas, or he loved this guy, and it was a big draft miss, and that happens. I mean, that just, if you're a draft analyst and you're going to call your shots for any length of time, you're going to have misses. I have misses. You have misses. People still seem to listen to us. So I think, trying to point to one or two examples of where Riddick got a, draft prospect wrong or had a bad ranking is just kind of silly.
Yeah, look, I mean, if this was a science, if people had down with people, certain people would never lose their job, that kind of thing. And, they'd already, some of these guys would already be in these positions, and stay there for a long, look, even Kevin Colbert's missed over the years, right? I mean, it happened.
Yeah, they all miss.
Everyone
misses.
Right. Did you mention Morocco Brown by name?
I had not yet. I was focusing on Riddick, and then I was going to talk about today. The news came out from Adam Schefter that Colts scouting director Morocco Brown has they've requested an interview with him. So I assume that'll happen in the near future as well. So that is the latest external candidate to be announced.
Boy, you dig deep into him, find a connection there, makes it even more interesting. Morocco Brown attended NC State, Alex. And led it in football 1994 to 1998. He was a team captain, two-time honorable mention All-ACC linebacker while there. After college, he signed with the Steelers as an undrafted college free agent in 1999. Obviously did not make the team, was cut, I think, that following was August, September, right around in there, and all. His brother is University of Pittsburgh's basketball associate head coach Milan Brown, who was hired by Jeff Capel. And one other little bit of info that I dug up on him, a native of Hampton, Virginia.
Oh, a little 757 action, I think, right? Hampton Roads, a little by Tomlin area. Okay, I like your sleuthing, Dave. There you go.
I've learned well from you, Sensei. But
it just goes wax on, wax off.
Yeah, wax on, wax. It just goes to show that there are links, in this thing a lot of times. The further you drill down in some of this, so my eyes were already a little bit raised with the little bit of that link back to the Steelers, and then I hit the Hampton, Virginia, and that really raised my eyebrows there. Not that it means anything, not that anything will come out of it, but I bet they knew Morocco Brown a little bit before they talked to him.
Yeah, I bet. And I know sometimes people will kind of turn up their nose whenever I mention some of those connections and relationships. But like I said, coaching is so much about relationships and who you know and just guys you meet along the way and those kind of ways to not get hired, but kind of get in the door, get in that conversation. And so, so often, we these hires that the Steelers tend to make usually have that, relationship component. And that happens around the league. It's not unique to Pittsburgh. It's pretty commonplace around the NFL.
And the great Josh Carney, who, by the way, in case everybody doesn't know, Josh Carney's gone full-time with the site now. So congratulations to Josh Carney. Included a little video snippet in there. That guy's got a unique, colorful way of describing draft prospects and players in general. So if you get a chance, stop by SteelersDepot.com and hit that post on Morocco Brown and watch that video that Josh has included in there.
For sure. Sticky to the top of the page. Real quick, I just want to read the list of people they've interviewed or requested interviews for because this list has gotten pretty expansive here for the GM job. So internally, it's Omar Khan, Brandon Hunt. Externally, JoJo Wooden, Ryan Cowden, Ed Dowds, Lewis Riddick, and Morocco Brown. So those are the 7 no names as of right now.
All right. Yeah, Alex, before we get to the roundtable here, obviously Super Bowl weekend is now upon us here. And, man, what a great game it looks like it's going to be on tap here between the Cincinnati Bengals and obviously the Los Angeles Rams. They're currently the line out on that at mybookie.ag is the Rams. And how the heck are the Rams considered a visiting team? That's something my wife asked me the other day. They're playing in L.A., but they're listed as a visiting team. in this. I told her it was a whole rotate. I told her it's top secret. I'd have to it'd spend 30 minutes to telling her that. And then why that is she wanted no part of it from that point moving forward there. But look, once again, MyBookie has been a sponsor for us for several years now. They have every bet imaginable as you can imagine right now before the Super Bowl. When it comes to gambling, you always want to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck. That's why I always bet with MyBookie. At MyBookie, you can bet on all your favorite sports with exclusive promotions, contests, and more to find your winning bet. Right now, when you make your first deposit with MyBookie, you instantly receive double your first deposit. It's easy. All you have to do is go to mybookie.ag, sign up, and use our promo code TERRIBLE. That's terrible at sign up. Terrible. And MyBookie will double your first deposit instantly up to $1,000. How's that for some fast money to use to bet on the Super Bowl? Once again, you can use those extra funds to bet on all, everything imaginable on the Super Bowl. All the props that they have is just incredible. The things that they come up with to bet on, and MyBookie has them all. This promotion is only available for the rest of the regular season here, or the rest of this season here, which obviously will end with the Super Bowl on Sunday. So don't miss out. Head to mybookie.ag and use the promo code TERRIBLE and secure your double deposit bonus today. That's promo code TERRIBLE, so you can double your funds to double your winnings. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. And man, just the prop bets alone are just absolutely incredible with this. So make sure, if anything, you get by MyBookie, check out those prop bets and use our promo code TERRIBLE to get in 104 props. It looks like they have at MyBookie to bet on. So with that, carry on, Alex.
All right, Dave, anything else you want to talk about? I think we've kind of covered the big Steelers news. Am I missing anything ultra important here?
If not, we can make it up on the back end.
All right, great. So what we'll do now is we'll do our draft roundtable here, Senior Bowl edition, with Jacob Harrison, Tyler Wise, and Jonathan Heitritter, and of course, Dave and I as well. So we'll take a break and come back with those guys. And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And as promised, have a Steelers Depot draft roundtable edition. Had one prior to the Senior Bowl, when I have one post-Senior Bowl as well, with the guys Jacob Harrison, Tyler Wise, and Jonathan Heitritter, all three, and myself in attendance for the 2022 Senior Bowl. A lot of fun. Great meeting you guys in person for the first time, and you guys did just a tremendous job covering the event, much, much better than I did the first time I went down to Mobile. So appreciate you guys being on the show. I do want to talk about the quarterbacks here because it is such a heavy focus on the group that was down there. I do want to talk about other positions, though, because I know our preview show was pretty heavily revolving around the quarterback position. So I just want to kind of get your thoughts on maybe who the best arm, in your opinion, was, maybe one note you had on a particular quarterback down there. So, Jonathan, I'll start with you. Just give me an overall evaluation of maybe who you thought was the best quarterback down in Mobile and why.
So it kind of was broken up by days, I would probably say. So like day one, it was kind of like everyone was kind of at the same level. I would kind of say there was definitely highs and lows with everybody. You can kind of see that everyone was still adjusting to, doing a new offense, throwing to new receivers that they had never seen before. I would say the first day I would say that Sam Howell stuck out the most in terms of just being consistent while, having some misses here and there. I think he showed consistency with his arm strength, especially down the field as a passer, being able to complete the deep ball. But then after that, I would say day two, based on what we saw in the rain, as well as what we were able to get from all 22 tape on day three, I would say Malik Willis really stuck out just with his ability to have zip and velocity on his throws. Like that's one thing I kind of saw when doing his pre-draft profile and also going through summer scouting, was that he throws the ball really, really well in terms of generating that velocity on his throws, especially out to outside the numbers on the deep out route, on the being able to hit the cover two hole shot. And you saw that similar traits and trends down at Mobile. He was a little shaky at first. And again, you kind of notice that with his footwork, not always having his feet set behind him, wanting to all arm it, not always stepping into his throw. But at the same time, I think overall his arm strength and the zip and velocity that he has on his passes stood out the most of all the guys down in Mobile.
I don't mean to interrupt for non-Senior Bowl news, but Dave and I were talking about this in our portion. Doug Marone's been hired to be the Saints offensive line coach. So Doug Marone off the table for Pittsburgh. I know, Dave, you were talking about that, but no dice. We'll go with Dennis Allen.
Yeah,
all right.
We'll have to see which way that goes. Mike Munchak's still in play.
Yeah, still in play. I wanted to break your heart there for a moment on air.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Tyler, back to the quarterbacks here. Your perception of Malik Willis and maybe any other quarterback that stuck out to you in Mobile.
Yeah, so, I mean, Jonathan covered Willis pretty well. But, yeah, I mean, he definitely showed his arm strength over the course of all 3 days. The second day was definitely his best. Kind of showed he's definitely stuck out the most in the rain there and had his most consistent day. I think one thing, I mean, people obviously are hyping up Willis now because he was probably the best quarterback at Mobile, but I don't want to make it seem like he was, the standout, like clear cut. Like, I think some people might have some different opinions just from saying it, because there was no, he was, he was probably the best, probably closer than the media probably team. I think Desmond Ridder looked pretty good. He probably had a wow throw just about every day from what I saw. Mm-hmm. He's just another one that kind of has inconsistency with accuracy and stuff. And, Pickett, a lot of people haven't been talking about his performance there, but he's always pretty consistent. He's probably the most consistent guy and still kind of just carried over everything that I kind of saw going in about him. Can make all the throws, although it's not going to be might not be too many things that make you say wow about him, but he handles himself well in the pocket and can make throws outside the numbers in the middle of the field, what have you. And you could even see in the game there that he knows when to check it down. He can read the defense and figure out where to go with the ball with anticipation, everything like that as well.
Right. Jacob, same question, just your thoughts, maybe who you thought was the best quarterback there. And we apologize, Jacob's in a new office building, so there's really no sound to bounce off of. So it's a little echoey, but you can still hear him just fine. So, Jacob, your thoughts on who the top quarterback was down in Mobile?
Yeah, I agree with Jonathan. It was a day-by-day thing where I thought day one, Kenny Pickett came out, exaggerated his mechanics a little bit, but, definitely showing that he had been working on perfecting those so that it can become more natural to him. And I thought that he did a fine job on day one, but obviously day two, the glove didn't really help him in the weather whatsoever. Yeah. He had some struggles there as well. But I thought on the American team, it was a back and forth battle between Sam Howell and Malik Willis. And I went into Mobile with sort of a negative opinion of Sam Howell just based off of a lot of the noise, and even after having read the scouting profile on the site on Sam Howell, I was still like, I'm not really seeing it. And then seeing him in person, you get a feel for just how natural he is and how much losing his main targets last year kind of affected him. Mm-hmm. So his deep ball was the best out of anybody there, consistently across the board. Finding quick chemistry with his receivers, which wasn't easy for anybody to do because, outside of Christian Watson, it was really hard to find some consistency at that position. But even still, Malik Willis would find ways to outshine him. And his velocity was one of the ways that he found a way to do that. Obviously, with his ability to scramble and move around, his footwork, light as a feather, kind of floats around the field. It's very fun to watch him progress. And, obviously everybody has kind of this love affair with Malik right now, mm-hmm. With, how close Tomlin was to him and everything. But I came away very, very impressed by Malik Willis. As far as Ridder and Strong goes, it's kind of funny that Ridder had probably the worst week out of anybody and then comes up with offensive player of the game in the actual game itself. And his accuracy problems for me, and I think it all stems from, just being jittery and not being comfortable in the moment. And that's a really worrisome thing for me as a quarterback getting ready to be at the next level. Because if you have to sit and wait, then you're building up in your head what that moment is going to be like when you finally take the field. So I have a bad feeling that's only going to get worse and worse for him. And as far as Carson Strong goes, I don't think he showed off the arm that we all expected him to have. He appeared smaller than we expected him to be. There's just a lot of things that kind of pushed against him while he was in Mobile. So for me, it's easily it's Malik Willis 1A and Sam Howell 1B.
Okay. Yeah. Strong, that deep ball hung more than I thought it would. I don't know if that was just a newness of new players to throw to or not with Ridder. It's interesting because you're right. He didn't look fantastic in practice, but turned it on in the game. So how do you evaluate that? Who had talked to Sam Howell? I know one of you guys got a chance to see, I think, Howell on the podium. Which one of you guys talked to Sam Howell?
I saw him at the podium. I think Jonathan spoke with him at the breakfast.
Okay. How did his overall makeup look? Whenever I saw Bailey Zappi from Western Kentucky, I thought he was media at first. I made that joke on a Monday show. He just looked like really tiny. I know Howell's a similar height, weight, but overall, Jacob, what was his body makeup like? Did he look like an NFL quarterback?
He just looks like a dude, you know. I've seen people joke, you know, he doesn't look like your typical NFL quarterback, but what's ironic is he looks exactly like a quarterback currently in the AFC North, nonetheless. And he draws those comparisons in his body as well to Baker Mayfield. So he's not exactly, you know, hulking or anything, but I think these new modern quarterbacks are a bit on the smaller side just so they have a little bit more room for their athleticism to kind of shine through. But he's not a very imposing figure at all. If you ran across him on the street, I don't think you would freak out until you got up close and realized who he was.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan, real quick, you're our body science guy, I guess to say. What is your thought on Howell's overall body makeup?
Yeah, so compared obviously to the other guys, I mean, you're standing next to like a Daniel Falele or a Trevor Penning, like obviously far dwarfed in terms of that. But like, I wasn't necessarily rubbed the wrong way in terms of his overall size and stature. I thought that his frame was well filled out, and you can kind of see that when going back into his tape. And, you know, I'm doing the breakdown on how, like, just seeing how he is a pretty dense dude. He carries his weight well. It's not like Ridder where he comes in at 6'3", but weighs 207 and, you know, is kind of svelte and slight of frame. Seeing him up close in person, like, he carries his weight well. There's nothing really wrong with that. And yeah, like, he's not the tallest guy, but from my understanding, like, the hand size was very matched up with what frame he had. Like, I didn't see anything from a measurables standpoint that kind of rubbed me the wrong way compared to guys that are a tad bit undersized, but, you know, I don't think he's he measured in at like 6 foot and 2/8 of an inch. So it's like, he's not below that 6 foot mark, which, you know, is kind of like damning for a quarterback unless you are like super athletic, like a Kyler Murray or something like that. So I would say size wise, like, standing next to him, doing an interview with him, like, you know, I kind of figured like, because this guy has like the makeup measurable wise to be a quality quarterback in the league.
Gotcha. Good information there. We know if quarterback is not in play ultimately for Pittsburgh at 20, offensive line likely to be high on the list. And so, Tyler, I think you had one day maybe watching the offensive lineman in particular, your evaluation of some of the top guys you watched in Mobile.
Yeah, I mean, there is, I would say, a few guys that stuck out. Obviously, Penning. I know Jonathan's love affair with him. Yes, he obviously bullied people day in and day out there. The other guy that stuck out obviously was Zion Johnson. And I think that's a name that we really need to. I mean, I know we talked about him a good bit, but probably need to get more familiar with him just as a name for Pittsburgh. Just because he showed great versatility, moving to center obviously for a good part of the week, and that was something that he actually hasn't done yet. So it was good to see him be able to kind of prove that he can be stuck there and play and you know, hold his own. He does show great versatility, and we know Pittsburgh loves that as well. He played some tackle at Boston College. Obviously, his mainstay is guard, but being able to play all 5 spots on the line is certainly impressive. And I think most of us got a chance to talk to him at least a little bit at the dinner. I mean, at the media breakfast, and really seemed like, you know, a salt of the earth type human being. Very, very easy to talk to, and obviously we learned that he was a Steelers fan. Able to be watching, he loves watching Marquise Pouncey film. Steve Adazio, who was his one of his coaches at Boston College also coached Marquise Pouncey at Florida back in 08. So it's kind of a cool connection there.
Yeah, that was a cool nugget of information. I want to go back to Penning, and I got to talk to you, Jonathan. We're talking Trevor Penning, obviously one of the most physical dude there, just getting in scraps all the time. Some people will say it's a bit too far. Where do you draw that line, and just overall your thoughts on Penning coming out of this week?
So with the way Trevor Penning plays, like when I talked to him at the podium, I kind of was like, what do you want to come here to Mobile to showcase? Like, because me being a strength conditioning guy, him being well known and renowned for his feats of strength in the weight room, like I was like, how is that going to display or come out in display when you're down here at Mobile and how you play? And he was like, I want to be the biggest, meanest, nastiest offensive lineman here and show that I belong not only at the top of the class, but I am the top of the class in terms of offensive tackles. So in terms of his run blocking, it was well documented even well before the season started, and then going through the season and then up in lead to Mobile, just how physically dominant he is as a run blocker. He doesn't have this idea of like, okay, I'm going to block you to the whistle. I want to block you to and through the whistle, put you into the bench, put you on the ground, and then stare you down as you do it. And that third day where we didn't have the opportunity to watch, like there was multiple highlights going on NFL Total Access or whatever when they're covering Penning and they're covering the Senior Bowl practice, and we got to review it. And he's just being as chippy as he possibly can. And that was the same thing that we saw like day one and day two when we were there in person. And, you know, some people are not going to like it because like, oh, you guys are in an all-star game. Why would you want to do it? I personally love it because it shows that you set the tone for an offensive lineman. And how many times you look at it this past year where Najee Harris would get bottled up but get tackled by 4 or 5 guys and no one comes in and tries to push the pile. Or how many times as a pass blocker is Ben picking himself off the floor and the offensive line doesn't come up and pick him up. Like that's something that you want to see, like that he cares. Like he genuinely cares, and he wants to show that in how he goes about his business. And I think that when you're working with some teams that take a genuine interest in being nasty run blockers, like Baltimore Ravens, the Tennessee Titans, they come to mind as like these power run. We're going to run it down your throat and you can't stop us. Like for him to showcase that ability to teams that are looking for something like that, I think that was very big for his part. Kind of going just a little bit into his pass protection. A lot of people are saying, oh, he needs to get stronger in terms of holding up in pass protection, where it's not strength is the issue. So there's 2 types of strength. So you have the strength that you have generating force going forward, like you are in a run blocking scenario. But then you also have physical strength where you can anchor and sit down against another force moving against you. So that's where he needs to work on that technical strength. He has that strength in his lower body, don't get me wrong. He just needs to play with better leverage, better hip bend, and a better anchor to be able to stall those pass rushers that seem to be giving him a lot of problems because he was standing upright. He was lunging and leaning into his blocks, trying to use his length, but not playing with great sound technique when edge rushers were trying to get the corner around him or counter cross his face back inside. So that's an issue that he struggled with mightily, especially those first couple days. He got better with it on day 3 from what you could go back on the All-22, but that's just the main thing that he needs to work on. But when it comes to run blocking, I mean, he's about as good as you're going to get.
Yeah, and despite all the chippiness, I think what his peers voted him, offensive lineman of the week for his side of the ball, so they certainly weren't too upset about that. Just real quick, Jonathan, do you view Penning as a first-round talent? Do you think, despite some of the warts and small school concerns, he's worth taking in the top 32?
Yeah, so initially when I started like the season on Penning, like I just was so enamored by his run blocking prowess and, the fact that he hardly ever gave up anything in pass protection. I thought that, bona fide, top 15 pick, lock it in. Now it's more like you notice that there's warts in terms of pass protection, especially if you're talking about left tackle, right tackle, what's the difference? But both have to be very good pass protectors, especially if you go to a team like the AFC North or in the AFC North where you have to face the likes of a TJ Watt or a Myles Garrett, and they're coming at you every single play. So I think that the big thing is with him, it's not physical that needs to be made up. He has the physical traits to be a sound pass blocker. It's just more mental and technique, because frankly, when he was never hardly challenged at Northern Iowa, so he never really had to play with that technique. And that's something he told me in an interview that he's working with Duke Mayweather, a renowned offensive line coach, is just working on his technical side, making sure that he is moving his feet and has his hands and feet synced up in pass protection, which is something that they never really stressed a whole lot when they were at Northern Iowa with him and Spencer Brown. And it's something that he's continually getting better with. And that's something that I like to see from a scouting perspective, how he struggled mightily day one. And I'm talking to you guys, I'm like, man, he's amazing as a run blocker, but pass protection, it kind of scares you. But then he gradually showed that he got better every single day against competition that was probably, frankly, the best that he's ever seen in his life. So if he's able to continue to improve that base and pass protection, I think like right now he would probably warrant being a mid to late first round pick. And he can honestly warrant being higher than that depending on how he develops as a pass protector.
Yeah, that progression always important. Jacob, any thoughts on maybe any other offensive lineman you watch, anyone who stuck out to you in a positive or negative sense?
Yeah, well, I went into Mobile with bright eyes for Daniel Fa'alele, the big Minnesota guy that nobody can seem to miss. He was very fun to talk to at breakfast, but there were concerns about his ability against speed for obvious reasons. And I think guys like Tyreek Smith and the speed rushers, they took notice and they kind of abused him on those inside moves. And he's got quick feet. He definitely has a quick grasp for the game, but it was something that you kind of fell back and was like, maybe there is something lacking there. But I do still think he's a lot like Penning. Like there's so much upside there that if you took him in the late 20s, nobody's gonna yell at you like you've reached or anything. Especially as a guy who is pretty much committed to playing right tackle based on his experience, but said openly, he doesn't see it as a slight to have to move inside if he does. I don't see him doing that just because of how big he is. But I do still love him as a prospect. Obviously, the two Georgia guards were rather insane most of the week, along with Darian Kendrick out of Kentucky. Those big SEC guys showed out, and they have a tendency to do that overall. But bullying folks without necessarily getting into post-play fights like Penning did. But the guy that really stood out to me on the offensive line, just because he was consistent. He's not a guy that's going to go first or maybe not even second round, but Spencer Burford out of UTSA, I thought he was just consistent all week. He got beat a couple of times, everybody did. But as far as using his feet, keeping a good mirror, anchoring well, he didn't get slap run over like some of these guys did. I mean, Daniel Fa'alele got slap run over at one point. A lot of big names lost some pretty big reps, but this dude was just overall consistent. So I think anybody looking for somebody to develop in maybe a late second, early third, or so on, they could find somebody that they really like there.
What's Burford's best position?
He played pretty much everywhere, but I would say probably inside at guard.
Okay.
Yeah, just as far as length and technique and everything like that, and just having to develop a guy coming from a place like UTSA. They were very, very good this year, but that translation for a program that's been pretty stale for a long time and it's just not putting some talent out there for people to get their eyes on. I do think you need to be a little bit wary about that.
Brandon Thorne, prior to the, he does a lot of work, obviously, with offensive linemen and defensive linemen, breaking down their tape. Probably one of the best in the business when it comes to outside the business of evaluating these guys. He had Zion Johnson, obviously, I think ranked number 1 heading into the Senior Bowl, and then Bernard Ramon out of Central Michigan, the Vienna, Austria kid. Why didn't we hear much out of him? What's the overarching thoughts on him coming out of the Senior Bowl week?
I'll take this one. So this is Jonathan speaking. So Raymond, it was interesting because he was one of those guys where he never really flashed, but he never had those terrible moments either. He was just kind of there, if that makes sense. So he never there was a lot of hype on him coming up, and kind of watching a little bit of his film. I haven't done a deep dive in it yet. It's just, he started out shaky at the beginning of the season and he steadily progressed as the season went on in this 2021 season. But yeah, he ended up coming to Mobile and, there was this hype of him possibly going top 15, top 20 as an older tackle, making the conversion over from tight end and, coming from overseas. But, it was one of those things where he just failed to stick out in terms of the group, in terms of having those plays where he dominated as a run blocker, or where he definitely got the best in terms of pass protection. And that there were plays where he would get beat, but he never got beat bad like you would see in terms of Falele or Penning and adjusting in terms of against the pass rush. So it's just one of those things where it's just it was kind of a meh performance. I mean, I probably need to go back more and watch more of the All-22 and go back and watch a couple more games from this past season. But yeah, just in terms of Raymond, I was left wanting more, if that makes sense.
Is that a concern? Because coming out of small kid, small school kid, kind of essentially Central Michigan, and a lot of hype on this kid. Brandon Thorns has him number 2 on the list. I don't think you take that lightly there. So, is there a little bit of concern of how he did fare in Mobile? And then, kind of the last little part of my question, anybody feel free to jump on it. Outside of Zion Johnson, who was the best true guard in Mobile that the Steelers might be interested in?
So I would go with, again, in terms of the concern with Raymond, I would say that it definitely is a concern, because obviously you're drafting him. The guy is raw, so he has upside going forward as he adjusts more to the position. But at the same time, I believe he's going to be 25 at least when the season starts. So you're drafting a 25-year-old rookie, going to be 26 at some point during the season. So, it's kind of like when Garrett Bowles came out of Utah a few years ago and how he struggled mightily his first 2 to 3 years in the league. And then eventually, just with holding penalties, being out of position, eventually got back on top of it and, earned a Pro Bowl, whatever that, qualifies for itself now, and earned a big contract with Denver. But if you're looking for a plug and play ready tackle right now, I don't know if Raymond's going to be that, because he's still very, very raw, but he's also on the older end of the spectrum. So, he could develop into a good starting quality tackle, but I just don't see the same upside in this class, having done the profile on, say, Charles Cross, Ryan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, Penning. I see those guys more of having the traits to translate and provide an impact right away over than Raymond. And then going into the other question about the guard, I was going to go with probably what Jake was talking about with the Georgia guards, Jamari Sailor, the guard tackle from Georgia. So he played a little bit of tackle. He played a little bit of guard. Him and Justin Schaefer both really stood out, but I would say Sailor just stood out with his ability just to generate that push in the running game, but also his consistency in pass protection. And just that versatility that you have, having played on the blind side at Georgia, going up against, say, Will Anderson at times at Alabama and some of those SEC pass rushers, but also have the ability to kick back inside. That guard tackle versatility is going to make him a lot of money. And I think he'll go a lot earlier in that day 2 range than what people are probably giving him credit for at this time. He seemed like I never personally interviewed him, but he was very well spoken. He had a great personality, very charismatic, answered every question well, looked you in the eyes. I was interviewing guys that were next to him, but I really wish I had the opportunity to talk to him one-on-one. But I was very impressed with both his play and how he presented himself down in Mobile.
And I know Ed Ingram from LSU got some high marks for the job he did as kind of one of the more pure guards. Some off-the-field questions to answer, but on the field looked like he had a good week. As Jacob said, the SEC guys well represented. Moving on now to wide receivers, always one of the highlights, one of the more fun positions to watch because of the plays they can make. Probably not the best crop of receivers ever to attend the Senior Bowl before Pittsburgh, likely to be in the market to add to that position during the draft. Tyler, I'll start with you. What receivers caught your attention, and who do you think is a good fit for Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so everybody knows who I'm going to talk about first here. It's Christian Watson. I can't say enough about him as a player. Obviously, going into the Senior Bowl, it's someone I talked about, and last time I was on the podcast of who I was excited to see. And I think he pretty much answered all the questions I wanted to see from him there. He can get off the line well. He doesn't have the most versatile release packages. You're not going to see him do too much crazy stuff there, but he can still run through some people as well if he needs to. That functional strength. There's a few times, the guys are kind of trying to take away the inside of him on a slant. He's still able to muscle through and make the play, make the catch, everything like that. I think the other thing I really wanted to see from him was contested catches. That was one thing that was kind of worrisome. I didn't see a ton of that on his tape, and it's not that he can't do it. It just I didn't see it as much when watching him. And he made quite a few at the Senior Bowl that made me comfortable that he can do that. I don't think there's much he can't do. We really weren't able to see him truly open it up as much as I would have liked to see, some deep passes and things like that. But he's also a great blocker. And I actually have an article coming out later today about his blocking just at the Senior Bowl. So basically everything that you'd want there. Probably projects more as a I would say a Z type to start. Just because his route running still I don't know. Basically, I just feel like his route tree hasn't been that huge, being at run heavy North Dakota State offense. I think having him start as a Z type, running those deep posts, comebacks and things like that nature, are more his wheelhouse right now to start. Maybe he can transition into a true X later in his career.
And I was impressed by the football IQ in the game on that low throw from Pickett. He, not touched. He gets up immediately and starts running when everyone else kind of quit on the play. And so just knowing those small things and, when the rule changes kind of impressed me. Jacob, same question to you. Any receivers?
Real quick here. I've been trying to swim laps real quick to catch up with Tyler on Watson. I did a full contextualization that's on the site of all 50-something targets that Watson did. So I kind of got a good feel for him. Tyler, I mean, this is a kid that played a lot of X at North Dakota State, but I'm with you. I mean, his get-off's not going to be confused with Deontay Johnson. I don't think in that aspect there. Is this guy, even though he played a lot of X there, I think at North Dakota State, played some Z, I think as well too there. This is a guy that predominantly first couple years in the NFL is probably going to be a Z, and whether, probably not a big slot at that either, right? I mean, is he going to be a Z at the NFL level with the occasional ability to move around, or is he going to be able to play some in the slot as a big slot?
Yeah, so I mean, they did move him around a ton at North Dakota State. They tried to get him the ball a ton of different ways. Like they had him lining up in the backfield and doing true runs.
Sure did.
So
and he has a lot of runs too. I mean, he had a lot of end arounds and they did use him a lot in the backfield. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, a name that we floated around at the beginning of the Senior Bowl was Martavius Bryant, honestly. I think he's a better player, all-around player than Martavius Bryant, but just with the body size and explosion that he kind of shows, I think that's the type of kind of trajectory I see him at the next level. That true Z guy that, can make a big play. I mean, I mentioned to him too about kind of trying to pinhole him into a Z spot, and he obviously, most receivers are, they're confident guys are going to say they can do everything, but he was saying that he tries every time his offense, that was the biggest thing he tries to do is try to learn X, Y, Z. He said, no matter what it is, I'm going to learn what I can do to get on the field. I mean, I definitely see him starting as a Z. I don't. Maybe eventually they can move around, try to get some mismatches. But I mean, I'm putting it Z and probably sticking him there at least year one.
Okay.
Jacob, just give me quickly another name at receiver that stuck out to you at this year's Senior Bowl.
So I went in. I didn't want to focus on somebody that should take early because I don't want to. In my head, I don't think that's a very good play strategically for all the holes that Pittsburgh has. So I wanted to see if there was somebody on the back end that had that bleep speed that I've seen Dave talking about. I don't know if you let me swear on here, but
I got an answer. I got an answer for that. Don't worry.
Okay. So I went in and Bellis Jones out of Tennessee was the guy that I kind of stuck to. Interviewed him during the breakfast and learned a little bit about him. But at his final year there at Tennessee, now he's old. He's played 6 years. Had a redshirt year, took advantage of the COVID year as well. So he's a tad older, but I mean, he's got to run somewhere in the 4.4. Had a good game in the Senior Bowl. I don't think he got really the recognition for what he was able to pull off as far as the stats go in that game. But I mean, he's fast, and that the Josh Heupel system at Tennessee is wide open. It's chuck it down the field. It's get guys in space down the field, and that's what he excels at. He's not a dynamic route runner. You're going to have to work on his hands a little bit, and that's a bit of an annoyance for a guy that has this kind of age on him. But if you want that kind of speed at a premium, I think that's kind of what he provides you, and I think he showed that on Saturday.
Where do you think he goes? I know you said more of a back end guy, but how would you define his draft stock now?
When you're that old and you still have that many holes in your game, I wouldn't draft you higher than the 6th round.
Okay, so a later day 3 guy.
Yeah.
Jonathan, just a more broader question, might be tougher to answer, but who do you think is going to be of the Senior Bowl group? Those in attendance, who's going to be the first guy selected? Because again, it wasn't as strong or as top heavy of a class down there as we've seen in past years.
That's a good question.
Ooh, so top guy selected. I'd probably look toward the defense, more specifically like the edge rusher position, and just seeing how like different guys have dominated. Like we were.
I'm saying wide receivers. Is it Watson going to be for the first receiver selected, or is it going to be another Romeo Doubs?
Yeah, so I would say probably Christian Watson, just what he showcased and his ability to win, not only as a receiver but also being able to create separation as a route runner, being able to make contested catches in the end zone and along the sideline, being able to come down with the speed and bounds, being able to adjust to the ball on the fly, and then also just his willingness as a blocker too. I think that Tyler's done enough clips on Twitter as well as with his draft profile to showcase the full skill set that he has. So I'd say Christian Watson's probably definitely up there. And then I would probably say, going back to mine and Dave's love affair, is Romeo Doubs. I think he made himself a decent amount of money down there as well too. Because like being able to see him in person, like you thought, okay, he carried himself with a really good frame. But I remember talking with you, Alex, just about like how he came off bigger in person. Like he was like a legit like 6'2", came in at about 205. He had big lobster cracker hands that you'd like to see, where he could snag the ball in contested catch situations. He had a really nice grab from Desmond Ridder in the game, where he caught the ball and then later took a hit on the down the middle for a nice catch. He showed nuances with his route running. He was able to drop his hips and drop his shoulders and break back out of his routes. So I thought just his overall game from when you evaluated him last year and then through the summer and going through his tape this year in the pre-draft profile, I thought that he showcased his game to be a more well-rounded receiver than just flanker, Z-type, going to stretch the field. I thought that he did really well and made himself a lot of money that way, to just show that, okay, he can play inside, he can play outside, he can play left side, he can play right side, and he could adjust based off of what the offense calls for him to do. And I know that you interviewed him, had a good conversation with him as kind of more of an anti-diva receiver. And then even speaking to his quarterback, Carson Strong, talking to him and, asking him the question, okay, is Romeo a true 4-4 guy? And he's just like, he plays 4-4, like whether or not that's a high or a low 4-4, we will see that at the combine. But just that he said that ability to go and get the ball was something that he always appreciated with him as one of his top receivers, not only as a deep threat down the sideline, working to catch the ball over his shoulder, but you saw him take the ball off of the defenders' heads like you would see with a James Washington at times, or this ability to catch the ball down the sideline as he's coming out of bounds. So I think that Romeo Doubs, right after Christian Watson, was probably the most impressive receiver that I saw.
So Romeo Doubs is so 2021 now.
You thinking like early day 2 for Watson and Doubs? If you had to kind of, I know it's a tough question to answer right now, but like early day 2 for those guys roughly?
So the problem is that the wide receiver class is so saturated with guys at the top. And it's like you have guys like Traylon Burks, who's just this height, weight, speed specimen. You have Drake London, who's just like this Mike Williams, Mike Evans kind of clone where he just goes up and gets the ball. You have guys like Jamison Williams and John Metsu. Where are they going to go? Like, are they going to pass on Jamison Williams with his speed at the end of the first round? Is John Metsu going to be able to crack into like early day 2? Then you have the Ohio State guys with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson's being touted as the number 1 receiver in this draft class. So it's just, the problem is that there's so much talent but it's a supply and demand kind of thing, which is very, very nice in the case of Pittsburgh, where I think that there's going to be a very good receiver, whether it be a Christian Watson or if it be a Romeo Doubs, sitting there at like the third round at pick 84, I believe it is, for them for the taking. And much how Dave said in a previous podcast, mark it down right now that Steelers are going to take a receiver in the first 3 rounds. I'd be willing to take money on that bet as well too, just because I think they're going to see the board fall to them. They will look at offensive, defensive line, look at linebacker, quarterback early, and then have the value at receiver come to them based off of what they saw at Mobile. So I would like to put Christian Watson, say, oh, there's no way after what he showed he gets out of the second round, or Romeo Doubs doesn't fall into the pass into day 3. But just because of the supply and demand of the position, I definitely do think that both those guys have a good chance of getting into round 3. If not, Doubs possibly falls into round 4, in which case you're just liking at your chops to be able to select one of these guys as a great value pick.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Love that. Dave, any questions about the offense that I didn't ask that you wanted to ask the guys about the Senior Bowl offensive performance?
No, who was the best tight end? Who was the best all-around tight end? Not that Steelers will be in the market for one, but who was the best all-around tight end there?
McBride.
Who?
McBride.
Oh, yeah, McBride. Okay.
Yeah, easy. Dude's just solid all the way around. And I was talking with the guys about this during practice at one point too, though. Looking at the tight ends that were there, it was very refreshing that most of them were traditional inline tight ends. Everybody had, similar skill sets. They all could block. They could all make plays, get open for scrambling quarterbacks. But Trey McBride has hands like glue. He's insane. I think they said on the broadcast he only had like 1 catch. His last year at Colorado State, or 1 touchdown catch his last year at Colorado State, which is mind-boggling to me. That dude can make plays.
All right. You guys kind of agree, Tyler, Jonathan, McBride, probably the top guy, first tight end off the board?
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. I would say that the big thing was with a lot of scouts and just hearing murmurs around there too, like when he got measured and he came in like around like 6'3.5", or he was like not over 6'4", and that was like a big concern. It's like, oh, we have one of these other, H-back tight ends. Like he doesn't have that prototypical size that you like to see, but no, just he played so much bigger than his size, and his willingness as a blocker, his ability to play on the line of scrimmage, play detached and more of the slot. Like I would say that definitely stuck out to me. And going back, there was like this really great catch that he made over top of a defender, just with like grab the ball like off of his head, running down the seam, and it was great to see something like that. And kind of like what I see from him right away is like a guy that plays himself more into the draft as he goes on. So like one guy that kind of stood out to me when watching his film was Max Williams, the tight end from Minnesota that came out a few years ago that was drafted by the Ravens. He came in just a shade under 6 foot as well, in that 245, 250 pound range, but just was this kind of like do it all tight end that still was dynamic enough to, make an impact, has made some plays for the Arizona Cardinals in recent years. But yeah, I see McBride as a more physical blocker than what Williams was coming out. And I think that, he's going to go to some team and he's going to provide a good value pick on day 2.
Tyler, any just quick 10-second thoughts on tight end position down there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole team, I don't know if it was, I think it was a national team that had, Jake Ferguson from Wisconsin, Charlie Kohler, McBride was on the team as well, and then Jeremy Ruckert. All those guys, I mean, were very, I could see them stepping in day 1 with most teams and being, that tight end 1 that you need to be. They're all those traditional tight ends that, they can block in line, but they also, they looked very smooth, running routes. I think I saw the one weird thing about Jamie Ruckert was I think he had like 4 or 5 false starts in I think it was like 7-on-7s and walkthroughs even. He was false starting. I'm not really sure what was up with that. It was always Ruckert, but yeah, I mean I would this might be one of the deepest tight end classes I've seen in recent memory. With traditional tight ends, and there's definitely going to be some guys that are going to fall into those midday rounds that are going to make some teams happy and have their tight ends for years to come. Sure,
an impressive class overall. All right, let's switch over to the defense, and I don't know if it was regarded as a particularly strong interior defensive line overall class, but the defensive linemen for both sides were tremendous down in Mobile, and you have a ton of names we'll talk about here. Jonathan, I'll start with you. I know Travis Jones is a guy that was on your radar all week. You got Winfrey, You got Johnson from Florida State. I mean, the defensive line, both sides of the National American teams, I thought had excellent weeks.
Yeah, so kind of going right into it, I developed a quick love affair with UConn's Travis Jones when I was down there. I didn't know much about him. I watched a little bit, just some clips before going to practices, and just saw this big guy in the middle of a UConn defense that honestly wasn't that good. And, just being able to eat blocks and being able to get off the ball and, make his presence known as a run defender. But then seeing the dude in person, like, I don't know if it was the same with you guys, but he came in a little bit over 6'4", 326 pounds, which was actually down, so he cut weight. He originally came to UConn as an offensive tackle and moved to the defensive side of the ball, and he weighed about 350 pounds when he came in. So he's dropped weight since then, and you see that with his movement and his fluidity. Like, standing next to the rest of the defensive linemen, I mean, there were still some big guys there next to Perion Renfrey as well as some other guys, but he just was a hulking human being, had great definition in his arms and his legs, had this great, strong, big torso, and just looked like a rock. And you could just definitely tell that no one was really going to move him off of his spot. And he played that way. Like, his strength at the point of attack, whether if it was against single blockers, where he would just literally walked every single interior offensive lineman back into the lap of the quarterback. There was one play where he just gave a nasty long arm to Andrew Schrober, I think, the tackle that played a little bit of center from Michigan, and just ran him into the quarterback on the one-on-ones. And the only person that actually had some success beating him on occasion was Zion Johnson, where he would be able to drop anchor and just be able to stall his rush. But there's plenty of times where Jones was able to also get the best of him. But the thing is with Jones, not only he has that great play strength and that power at his size, but he also is very kind of like deceptively nimble and shifty on his feet. He had a really nice club swim move that he would use to get offensive linemen who would try and lunge and kind of attack him first, and then he would just shed them and get into the backfield. And his ability not only to win against single blocks, but double teams really stuck out to me. There was multiple times doing his profile for Steelers Depot, as well as watching during the practices, where he would be able to string a play out, take on the double team with the center and the guard, allow the linebacker to run free to the ball, and then be able to shed and chuck the block and be able to make a play himself. Just seeing that movement at his size, having the ability to play as that traditional nose tackle as a zero tech, but he has also played a little bit out to the three tech as well too. So it's not like he's just penciled in as a 2-run plugger. He has shown the ability to generate a little bit of pass rush that we saw at Mobile. Is he going to be, a defensive end? Absolutely not. But I think that he can definitely be a rotational guy and isn't just pigeonholed into being a traditional nose tech at the next level.
Tyler, your thoughts on this defensive line, guys, that stuck out to you in probably largely positive ways?
Yeah, so Perion Winfrey was I thought the clear-cut most dominant person in Mobile, kind of across the board. And I don't think there was really a rep that he didn't win. I mean, I'm sure there probably was throughout the week, but he was blowing up every single run session. And then obviously it translated over to the game too, getting the MVP. But I mean, he's a guy too that you can feel the energy just surrounding him. He brings his passion to the game, and he'll make a play and then he'll let you know about it, and then he'll keep his head bob and everything after the play, just getting the whole defense hype. I think he was probably the most vocal guy, at least on the defense side of the football, on a day-to-day basis. And he can swim by you. He can stack and shed. I mean, he was winning in numerous different ways. And he was the guy at Oklahoma that he was a part of like a heavy rotation. So I don't think he really got as much time to kind of showcase those things coming from a JUCO and translating over to big D1 school. And then being part of the rotation, I think really kind of hindered him, and he was able to kind of showcase that this week. And I think he really made himself a lot of money.
Jacob, same to you. And then if you want to touch on maybe any of the kind of 4-3 edge type rushers as well, feel free. I know some of those guys impressed down there.
Yeah, for me, it was Eric Johnson.
Right.
I fell in love with him pretty quickly. He's somebody I want to learn a little bit more about after I get done watching Caleb Ellaby. He understands how to maneuver his body. He's quick on the interior. Everybody marvels over the spin move that he pulled on Darian Kennard, which I think is more of just, surprising a guy who knows what he's doing your first day of practice, because later he tried to fake the spin move and use that, and he got blown up. But he uses his length to supreme advantage. He's not leaning into folks, which is something, you see Phil Mathis doing. You see a lot of guys that aren't utilizing their body correctly, and Eric, despite being, the FCS guy from Missouri State, like he understands how to use his body, uses strength, uses agility. And I marvel at him, the way that he came in and kind of took over the interior side of things. On the edges, I think you have to you have to pay a little bit of attention. Obviously, Jermaine Johnson was the guy that showed up and everybody kind of drooled over, but I think you had to throw some love towards the Penn State guys as well. I still can't say Arnold Ebiketie. I still can't say
Ebiketie, yeah.
Yeah, and Jesse Luketa. Luketa is the one that blew through Daniel Fa'alele on an inside drill. When you can plant a 400-pound man on his ass, like you're something special.
Yeah.
But both those guys showed extreme explosion off the edge. Both of them showed some versatility in their pass rush moves and their way to, make life a living hell for those offensive linemen on the other side. Because I think almost every single day the defensive linemen were whipping the offensive linemen in every way. And, obviously you do have a tinge of advantage because offensive lines do require some camaraderie in team drills. But overall, I mean, I was very pleased with most of the edge rushers that I saw, and it just speaks to how deep the class is.
And for Eric Johnson, it's just so good for those small school kids coming from Missouri State to have a chance to compete and show up on the big stage. I remember Javon Hargrave doing a similar thing several years ago. I know it's tough to gauge where that guy might go, and his stock's probably up a little bit, but do you see Johnson as kind of that early day 3 type of guy, or earlier or later than that?
That's what I'm thinking right now before turning on some game film. You don't want to read too much into practices, especially at the Senior Bowl. But I'm very excited to go see what his true build is and how dominant he was at that space. Because if you come up and you dominate SEC guards, then I want to see you win every single rep against FCS guys.
Mm-hmm.
Boye Mafe, thoughts on Boye Mafe? Is that he looks like he fits the mold for what Steelers look for in 3-4 outside linebackers, but I didn't know hardly anything about him before the Senior Bowl. Obviously came out of the Senior Bowl knowing a lot about him. I love those edge rushers. If it's me, he'd draft 7 edge rushers every year, but I don't think that's going to be possible this year for the Steelers here. But is this guy second, third round material, and is he the real deal?
So I'll chime in on this one, Dave. So Jonathan, I'll be on the mic. So Boye Mafe reminds me a little bit. I heard the comp of Josh Uche a little bit earlier, just kind of as this like a little bit of a tweener who can play with his hand in the dirt, as well as a guy that can stand up in a 2-point stance and rush off the edge. Another guy. He's a
better pass rusher than Uche to me.
That's what I was thinking. So then another guy that I kind of came to mind was his teammate at Michigan, Kwity Paye, who was drafted in the first round by the Indianapolis Colts, who has a very similar size profile. Isn't this long 6'5" edge rusher, but is more in that, he's more stout, more steady, but he still has great weight at 250, 255. And like for the most part during his career at Minnesota, he was more disruptive than productive, having played as long as he had. I mean, he still had like 13 and a half sacks, but he wasn't this guy that was just racking up the stat sheet every single year, but you felt his presence on the pass rush on every play. And that was something very similar to what happened with Kwity Paye when he was coming out of Michigan, where he was a dynamic pass rusher. He just didn't always get home all the time, but having that ability to generate that pressure and show that at the Senior Bowl for a guy like Mafe, we could definitely see a rise for him where he was kind of penciled in more as this like, okay, we don't know exactly where he is, where he's going to pencil in, like, kind of that guy that's in that, 80 to 100 mix. I think he's easily going to climb into that day 2 range. And then, Kwity Paye ended up being touted as a first-round draft pick. And depending on how some of these other edge rushers go in terms of how they fall with guys like Jermaine Johnson playing well, what's the case with Kayvon Thibodeau and like George Karlaftis? How do they test? Did they test poorly? Do they fall down the board? So it just kind of like pick your flavor, because much like what I said with wide receiver, there's the demand, there's like a need and a demand for wide receivers as there is for edge rushers. But the problem is that only so many teams can take an edge rusher, meaning good ones are going to fall down the board. So we could see guys that showed up at Mobile, like the Penn State edge rushers or Mafe, where they're extremely talented players and are going to be good pros, but it's just that other teams have other needs and other edge rushers get picked above them. So you could see a guy like Mafe in that day 2 range where, figuratively he might have the talent to be justified to go day 1. And it wouldn't surprise me that a team on the back half of day 1 ends up selecting him there based off of how he's played. But it's just that need and that want. And there's just so many edge rushers. Like, edge rusher is probably the deepest position right now from what I understand in this draft class. And there's just so many of them. And Mafe just showed that at the Senior Bowl.
Ooh, I want to scream like a little girl right now. The NFL Combine list just got released there. So excuse me.
Then hopefully we'll have a couple of guys going there, I think is kind of the plan. So
yeah, Jonathan hopefully to be one of them there. So carry on, guys.
I want to move to the off-ball linebacker position, which I thought was a really strong group overall, both sides of the football. Some really interesting names there. Jacob, I'll start with you. Just give me a lay of the land on some of the off-ball guys that caught your attention.
Yeah, I think if you're starting anywhere other than Darian Beavers, it's because of a man crush you have somewhere else. And I would understand it on a guy like Mumma, maybe. But I really love Darian Beavers. First of all, he was, and I know Jonathan knows too, he was a lot of fun to talk to at the breakfast, down-to-earth guy. But, 6'4", 240. They don't make linebackers like that anymore, and I wish they did. But guys that can make plays within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage, but can also be relied upon in coverage. And that's something I think he's, obviously going to have to prove that he can do at an elite level to kind of stack up and kind of fill in that mold that Zaven Collins did last year. But I don't know that it'll have the same kind of rise that Collins did. But, man, I really like Darian Beavers, and I love the way that he moves on the field and the power that he exhibits and the athleticism that he exhibits as well.
Tyler, what were your thoughts on Chad Mumma, a guy that I did the report on, was pretty familiar with, and I thought what he showed on tape he did at the Senior Bowl in terms of staying clean in the run game, taking good angles to the football, block shedding, being, I think, a functional and a good athlete overall. And I got a chance to talk to him one-on-one and had a good conversation with him. But just your overall impressions of Mumma, if you have any, or any other guys that stuck out to you at that position.
Yeah, so Mumma's definitely, everything you just mentioned. He can stay clean in the run game. He made quite a few plays, in the backfield and everything like that throughout the week. I think I sort of expected him to be more of an athlete than he was. I think that's just maybe expectations were a little high going in. I think he did seem, I think he's smaller in stature too than I thought. I don't know if you had the same opinion, but he's definitely a little smaller than I expected. And I think a lot of people were mentioning, I know we even talked about it there, the comparison, obviously the easy comparison to talk about it is Logan Wilson, also his teammate at Wyoming. I just don't see him moving as well as Logan Wilson did. So that's kind of the biggest difference there. Now, a guy that I think that, Mumma is a guy that people want to, use in coverage and everything, or talk about being, really good cover guy. If you want a cover linebacker in this, I really like Troy Anderson out of Montana State. I think he really impressed me throughout the entire Senior Bowl. He can move, man. There were times that I saw him, I think I was if it was a corner route or something like that from a running back. And, he initially got beat on the play and completely, sped up and was able to actually break away the ball. And they actually used him a ton in coverage at Montana State as well. So he was a guy that, I was really impressed with. He's bigger than Mumma is, I believe. At least through the eye test, he looks much bigger. So, he showed functional strength as well, being able to throw off blocks and get in the backfield a good bit as well. So he was probably the one that impressed me the most.
Yeah, his background's interesting, Jonathan. I think maybe you would tell me about it. I mean, like a quarterback, or I mean, his story and his path to playing linebacker is a unconventional one.
Yeah. So in terms of his background, yeah, he was kind of more of an offensive guy, and then he like went to Wyoming, and then they saw his athletic prowess, or like Troy Anderson. I'm sorry. Yeah. So he started out as a quarterback, and they ended up like having it where just the depth chart as well as like injury kind of had him, take a back seat in terms of being like farther down on the depth chart. And they just saw his athletic prowess in his frame. It's like, let's go ahead and try you at off-ball linebacker. And for him, he ended up putting on extra weight, and it ended up working in spades for him. Like, honestly, he is just range, his ability to play sideline to sideline, to be able to read and diagnose blitzes as that quarterback background, and also being able to understand and maneuver coverages and being able to get into zones and track down backs and tight ends as a man coverage defender. Just having that background, that quarterback background, has really done him wonders. My uncle, or my cousin, Leon Costello, is actually the athletic director at Montana State. And he kind of told me before going down, it's like, let me know how Troy does against that top caliber competition, because he obviously dominated at the FCS level, much like Penning did as an offensive tackle. And, it was a question of whether or not he would hold up his own in Mobile. And I think the first day he kind of struggled a little bit, but then after that, he kind of had the same situation that Penning had, where he just gradually adjusted to the speed of the game and got better as the week went on, and obviously capped it off with a great performance at the end of the week.
Yeah, and just in that similar kind of vein, talk about new positions. Sterling Weatherford from Miami, Ohio, safety in college, playing linebacker this week. I watched him the first day, and predictably he struggled a bit. You watched him more the second and third day. Did you see progression? Did you see improvement? Did he look more comfortable as kind of the week went on, that new position?
Yeah, so he got better. Like, obviously, the second day, it was a day that was in the rain, and I kind of talked to you about how his ball skills as that former safety definitely showed up. He was very fluid with his change of direction and flipping his hips in coverage. I was kind of making the note that notably all the other linebackers were struggling to get a hands on the ball, whereas he never dropped one when they were going through coverage drills. And then he was able to maintain staying sticky in coverage and not allow separation to be generated when covering backs and tight ends in coverage 7-on-7 drills. It's just with him, he got better in terms of reading and diagnosing against the run and being able to evade trash at the line of scrimmage and at the second level and be able to pursue the football. But much like you kind of noted in the first day, it's just that his lack of size and lack of instinctual awareness at that position came into play, where, a guard would climb up to the second level, or they would have it where a blocker or a tight end would get on him, and he's just done, just because he doesn't have that functional size or strength to be able to fight off and stack and shed those blocks. Where I think there was one play where it was either Beatty or my boy Damian Pierce got to the left sideline and brought it, or went up the hole that Weatherford was supposed to fill. And he just got completely driven back into the second level of the defense by a pulling guard and had no chance of being able to shed the block. So in terms of he's kind of built best for that nickel / like outside will type of linebacker role, strong safety, if you have it, kind of like what Marcus Allen kind of does currently for the Steelers defense, but just knowing that, he's not going to be your best overall player when it comes to run defense, but in coverage, like, he's going to be able to help you out there.
Yeah, just a really quick story on Weatherford. Day one, I was watching him lined up pre-snap off a linebacker. I don't think he knew what his assignment was. Something didn't get communicated properly. He's like looking around. He's kind of putting his hands up a little bit, and he gets his eyes around right as the ball gets snapped, and he just gets popped by like the right tackle, I think Lucas, and the tight end. They just drive him back. So definitely some context and some work in progress with him. I want to finish things out there by looking at the secondary. I think that's where a couple of my man crushes this week are going to come from. Guys like Roger Mccreary, Jalen Petre from Baylor, Mccreary from Auburn. Tyler, I'll start with you. Did you have any impressions of those guys? And if not, what other DBs really stuck out to you the most?
Yeah, so the mobile kid, Roger Mccreary, was kind of came in as the I think a lot of people thought he was going to be the best corner on these rosters. And I really think he pretty much stamped that. All the talk was about, his arms were short. I think I want to say 29 inches, something along
29 and a quarter. I think they are very short arms. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, how does he eat?
So a lot of people, because of that, have moved him inside already as slot. But I mean, speaking off his tape, I mean, he he did fine in the SEC against guys playing outside. So, I mean, maybe at the next level they're going to move him inside. He did play a good bit in the nickel at the Senior Bowl, but I mean, he's super sticky in coverage, and he is very fluid hips and is able to sink down and break on balls pretty easily. And he made a decent amount of plays in coverage just doing that. The other guy that may not get talked about as much, but I view him kind of in a similar light, is Mario Goodrich out of Clemson. He's another guy that just super fluid. He's not able to come up and hit you either. And I think the third guy that I wanted to talk about was Taylor Britt out of Nebraska. He's a guy that very versatile. You talk about a Swiss Army knife, similar to Trey Norwood for the Steelers. I mean, he was all over the field day one. He did get banged up a little bit, but I mean, they're moving him outside, inside. They're playing deep safety, box safety. He was literally everywhere for the defense. So definitely a guy that I need to dive more into his tape and see how they deployed him at Nebraska more. But his versatility obviously jumps off the table.
Yeah, that's interesting. Names I hadn't heard too much of, so I appreciate you bringing them up. Jonathan, same to you, DBs that you had any positive or negative impressions of?
Yeah, so I remember talking to Tyler, and I was asking him, because I was focusing more offensive line, defensive line. I was asking him about guys that possibly stood out or guys that weren't standing out, and I asked him, like, what was your take on Darian Kendrick, the guy from Georgia? And he was just like, man, he got burned a couple times early in the practice in terms of just not having his eyes in the right spot. And, that's kind of something that I noticed when he was originally at Clemson before he ended up going to Georgia, was a thing that he ended up being a feast or famine type of defender, which is why you see his teammate or former teammate, Andrew Booth Jr. being more touted as like that first round guy. So it's one of those things where he has those athletic talents and those athletic gifts, and he has a knack for finding the ball. As we saw, like he had 2 interceptions in the game versus Michigan in the semifinal. But at the same time, it's kind of feast or famine. He needs to be more consistent with his eyes playing forward. Another guy that I saw kind of struggled a little bit in terms of coverage, but I'm intrigued to learn a little bit more on, and I kind of need to go back and watch a little bit more, is Barone McKinley, the safety / nickel from Oregon. He
got called up midweek, right?
Got called up midweek, and I kind of noticed him, and just, one of those things where he was primarily more of a free safety / like nickel defender at Oregon. And as we well know, the Steelers like ball production when they look at drafting defensive backs, when they try to draft defensive backs. And he's a guy that has 11 interceptions in his 3 years playing at Oregon. He is a guy that just has a good knack of knowing where to be at the right place and the right time in order to try and make a play on the ball. He's listed as a redshirt sophomore, 5'9", 194. Like he has, or 5'10", 5'11", 194. Sorry about that. And he just was one of the playmakers on that Oregon defense this year, especially racking up 6 interceptions. So he noticeably struggled. They tried to play him a little bit outside in the boundary too. And there's a play where Bo Melton hit him on a stuttering goal on the right side on one-on-ones, and he got on top of him for a touchdown. And there's another play at the practice that we were not there at, and I included this clip in Romeo Dubs' most recent article where he's facing up against Dubs on the left side, one-on-one, and the quarterback just lost it up in the air. And then Dubs kind of baptizes him and grabs the ball over top of his head and just takes it off Des Bryant style in the end zone for a score. But I think that in terms of being a safety / nickel will be his best fit, just because he's shown he's had good instincts. He's a willing run defender, and he just has the ball skills to be able to make plays, which is something that you want going forward. He's a guy that I want to do more study and I want to kind of watch a little bit more on going forward, just knowing the Steelers' needs of having that nickel player that is needed since Mike Hilton left.
Yeah, that's why I think Petre could fit in, potentially that physical slot guy that can play some safety as well. Jacob, I know safeties are tough to evaluate because coverages are limited and they're away from the action, and contact is limited as well. Did you get any impression from those guys? I saw Leon O'Neal from A&M, kind of a rangy free safety. Tyson Anderson, big, long, versatile guy from Toledo. Any thoughts on the safety play down in Mobile?
Yeah, that's definitely probably the hardest thing for me to evaluate.
Yeah, or a corner. If there's a corner you want to talk about, then feel free as well.
I did notice during the game that Jalen Pitre, who everybody is going to rave about, he was all over the place. But again, he's much closer to the line of scrimmage. Kobe Bryant, though, is the defensive back for me, and yeah, I'm raving over another Cincinnati guy. But During the game, showed some toughness, ate a strong lick from Damian Pierce, and still hung on for the ride and helped his guys get to play. So I think showing that toughness. Again, he's the guy that won the Thorpe Award over Sauce Gardner, who hasn't ever given up a touchdown in his career. So I think there's something special about Kobe Bryant in terms of his makeup and his mentality. He's going to go much later than his counterpart, but I still think he's a supremely talented corner.
Dave, any other final questions here about the defense for the Senior Bowl you wanted to ask the guys I didn't ask?
Yeah, just who was pound for pound inside linebacker type that fit with the Steelers that could be that guy that gets in the backfield. Look, one of the things on Devin Bush that really stuck out to me during the pre-draft process was his inability or his lack of playmaking. Let's face it. I mean, the guy had the athletic traits and all like that, but he just was not making the plays, especially in those games when he played, with top-ranked teams. Who was the inside linebacker, pound for pound, that would fit the Steelers that came off as a playmaker type?
I'll answer this one, Dave. So obviously Jacob hit on my boy Darian Beavers, and just kind of like that difference in terms of size and stature, as well as ability to play downhill against the run. He's very physical at taking on blocks. He's one of the best linebackers I've seen in the last few classes in terms of being able to stack and shed and get off blocks against the run, and just his ability to play with his hands. Obviously, having played as a defensive lineman at UConn before, shedding weight, setting back up, and then playing as an off-ball linebacker at Cincinnati, while he still has it where he has the ability to put his hand in the dirt and rush off the ball on occasion as a defensive end at Cincinnati, he showed that he was ability and was a lot more comfortable playing on his feet this time around down in Mobile, which was great to see. Another guy that really stood out to me that me and Alex got to see a little bit.
I know where you're going.
Yep, Damon Clark, linebacker from LSU. This guy is a physical freak in terms of just being able to see ball, get ball. His pursuit and his burst when he sees the ball and he is able to track the ball down is pretty crazy to see in person. And just his physical stature, staying right under 6'3", right on 240 pounds, just this rocked up dude that excels downhill, sideline to sideline, but also has the movement skills to be able to cover backs and tight ends, being able to play in the flat, being able to have the athleticism to carry tight ends up the seam. Obviously, instinctual awareness is something that he continually needs to work on. But much like with these guys, I saw his film continue to improve while doing his pre-draft profile, and just how good he was as a person, just being able to talk to. Like, me and Alex both got to interview him, and he was just very soft-spoken, was very humble, had a very good mindset about him, talked about how he always deals with adversity and how he plays with that on the field, based off of having been uprooted from Katrina back when he lived in New Orleans, and then dealing with another hurricane in 2016 when he was in Baton Rouge, and just having that expectation of being a leader regardless of the circumstances, having guys like Devin White and Patrick Queen before him, and how they continually check in on him. He kind of seems like that next mold of LSU linebacker that, again, it's just crazy to have all these guys kind of in that day two range where it's like, kind of pick your flavor of what you want. Do you want a guy that's a physical presence inside? Okay, you take Darian Beavers. If you want a guy that's really good in coverage, look at a Troy Anderson or possibly a JoJo Domann. If you're looking for a guy that just is a physical upside and just all the traits that you want, then it's a guy like Damon Clark. And I just think that also having seen and having a picture posted of Mike Tomlin having a conversation with Damon Clark, it's just kind of one of those things where obviously he's going to be talking to a lot of guys. This is his personality at the Senior Bowl, but I do think that the Pittsburgh Steelers would have a legitimate interest based off of his physical talents and also the leadership and the character that he has coming out of LSU.
Fantastic.
Jacob, I know you have to take off here in a second, so feel free to after this answer real quick. But just to answer Dave's question, would you say Clark? I think Clark's a great answer from Jonathan.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with Clark. If I wasn't going to say Darian Beavers, I'd say that guy, because the ability to shoot the gap and not allow all the mess to phase him. Because I think that's something that really affects Devin Bush, especially after his knee injuries, is once he gets into the mess, now I have to protect myself. Now I can't go shoot the gap, make plays, get in the backfield, and do that sort of thing. When you're supposed to be that athletic guy and you're not able to make the plays in space or in the mess, then you got severe problems. But Damon Clark, for whatever reason, people have tried to find excuses not to kind of prop him up. So it's really, to me, really nice to hear guys like Jonathan really breaking down and show this dude really does have some athletic prowess to make plays and be just as much of a nightmare for offenses in the NFL as he was in the SEC, because you don't get that number 18 at LSU for no reason. So when I know when Alabama was getting ready to play him, he was somebody that I circled. So he's something special, and I think if you could find some value in him a little bit late, just because everybody else is ignoring him, you're doing yourself a favor.
Yeah, his growth, his leadership, development, I think that's a guy that checks all the boxes Pittsburgh's looking for. Jacob, I know you got to take off here. Appreciate your time. Great job at the Senior Bowl. You were fantastic. I know you're a Metallica fan, so go hit up Matthew Marks. You guys can, and Dave as well. You guys can pal around and talk. But thank you, Jacob. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys.
All right, Tyler, just kind of wrap things up here. Same thing to you, inside linebacker, or just anyone. Did anyone else feel like a Steeler to you, offense, defense? Did anyone kind of give you that? Because Clark gives me that, like he's going to be a Steeler feeling. Did anyone else give you that feeling, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, Zion Johnson definitely kind of is the guy that jumps off the page for me for in that way. I mean, Darian Beavers too. I mean, if we're obviously Clark's going to be more of your, shoot the gap type of guy. I think Beavers is just, I mean, he's a physical specimen within himself. I mean, we kind of were, before practice started, we were sitting back and, we were in awe in how big he looked compared to all the other guys. And, if the Steelers do choose to go to more of like, fill in the buck linebacker role, he's the guy I think they would really kind of fall in love with, to be that type of guy. Extremely physical. Obviously, we already kind of talked about, his background and everything, being a former defensive lineman and safety. So he's literally played all over the field. So he'd probably be the other guy beside Zion Johnson, who I could see in the black and gold very easily.
And I got to give a shout out to the specialist. Was it Jordan Stout from Penn State? Just boomed the ball, especially in that game. So my terrible take today is on punters, as you might expect. Ooh. So talk about a little punter action. I've been watching, and this is not Senior Bowl related, but highlights of Matt Ariza from San Diego State. I've never had so much fun watching a punter before. You probably, you saw a lot of them, I'm sure, Dave. I mean, that guy is just a joy to watch.
Yeah, boy. Now's the part where I tell everybody Mountain West Depot is on the way pretty soon. I've been watching way too much Mountain West football, I think, these last 2 years, but I really haven't. A lot of talent coming out of that conference. Really underrated conference, I think, this year in general. But yeah, that kid can do it all. Punt, kick, you name it.
Yeah, kickoffs as well. He'll go high. He won't be a late round pick, I don't imagine. But and tackle too. The guy can tackle. I mean, it's just a lot of fun to watch. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the Senior Bowl roundtable.
Hey, real quick. Tell me more about this Waffle House trip I was not privileged to, and really, how did you guys enjoy your time down there with Alex, the master?
I mean, it was incredible. I mean, it was literally everything that you could have imagined and more. I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, you watch the Senior Bowl from afar, and it's cool to see the guys up close and everything. But to actually be there and just standing, you turn every corner, there's someone new. I mean, we're sitting writing articles after the media breakfast, and Dan Marino is literally just walking down the hallway to us and says, "What's up?" And it's just like, you just shake your head and like, what is happening? Then we walk out to wait for the Uber, and Coach O is waiting there for his car from the valet. It's just crazy, every corner. And, being able to sit in there and talk to the guys and, yourself and see how they how their manners and stuff is very cool. Just seeing little things like even like something small like Desmond Ridder. When we were waiting for interviews, we had to put our phones on this pedestal thing, and it was raining out, and he took out his QB towel and dried it off for us and everything like that. And just like seeing small things like that you're like, hey, like that guy's a really he's a pretty good guy from what we see, and just seeing those little things and intricacies are very cool.
Yeah, I can kind of follow up with my moment of kind of just freaking out. Like I was coming out of the bathroom, and then Tyler's filling up his water bottle, and then like Alex and Jacob were just chilling by the stands, and then I turn around, and then like, you know, Tyler looks at me and gives me these big eyes, and I turn around, and then right like within 5-10 feet of us was both Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin, and Matt Cannon just standing there having a conversation with Drew Rosenhaus. And it was like, oh, well, that just happens. That's great. But then, yeah, just like, it was just cool to be able to, as a scout, like you want to be able to be up close and personal, because you can watch as much film as you want, but you're not able to have those personal interactions with people, and just being able to talk to a guy like Darian Beavers, being able to talk to a guy like Zion Johnson, being able to talk to like Malik Willis, Carson Strong. And then for me personally, like having the opportunity to run into a former player that I worked with at Florida, Damian Pierce, the running back. Everyone else is walking into this media breakfast, into a group powwow session where they're going to figure out and branch off. Whereas Pierce is walking into the media, just having no idea where to go. And then I go up to him like, dude, where are you going? And he ends up recognizing me out of the blue, like nothing happened. Like, cause I saw him in 2018 and worked with him there. And we just kind of, you know, shake hands, catch up a little bit. And I'm like, dude, you need to go back in there. I'll talk to you later though. And then we ended up catching up and ended up having a great interview that I'll post later to the site. But just those interactions were just great with the players, as well as just with the guys at Steelers Depot. Obviously being able to talk with you guys on Zoom calls, or, you know, for the podcast, or work often through Twitter with the Steelers Metroplex, but having the opportunity to work with you guys like in person, being able to meet with you guys, go out to eat, having it where I thought Alex was going to kick me because I made him walk 30 minutes in the rain or like in the cold from Hancock Whitney Stadium to my hotel. And then
it's 10-minute walk turned into this crossing roads. Jonathan just walking in front of cars. I'm scared.
It wasn't that bad, but I mean, sketchy. Yeah, I definitely could see it. But yeah, it was just awesome to be able to meet you guys in person and be able to just work like as a well-functioning, like well-oiled team, where it's like we kind of divvied up our position groups. We all went through it. We all kind of came together afterwards. We all kind of divvied up articles and interviews that we wanted to do. It was a truly enjoyable experience, and I cannot be thankful enough for it.
Yeah, no, you guys did a tremendous job, and so you should be very proud of yourselves. And the content is excellent, and so we're thankful for that. And definitely plans to be back at the Senior Bowl or maybe the Shrine Bowl somewhere next year. So that'll do it for this portion of the Depot Roundtable. We'll certainly have Tyler or Jonathan and Jacob, the other guys, Josh, Owen, Mel, etc., on throughout this draft process. But thank you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And Dave, great conversation there with the guys. I'm really happy to have them on, and just it was really cool and unique to get different perspective, different sets of eyes. We've never had 3 other people down there to the Senior Bowl before. It was either one person and myself, or just myself. And so to have that kind of ability to kind of cover everything, because when you're just one guy at the Senior Bowl, you can't watch everything. That's just an impossible task if you want to do your job well. So really good to get all those guys down there.
Blown away with the job you guys did down in Mobile, and the job Josh and Owen and Dr. Mel did out in Las Vegas. I couldn't be more pleased.
All right, running a little what's that, Dave?
And more proud. Yeah,
for sure. Same here. Running a little short on time, Dave. So let's just get to maybe 2 or 3 quick reader emails, and we'll close out today's show.
Got an email. Speaking of Dr. Mel, Judy Friedlander, who I believe is Dr. Mel's mom, sent in an email. Nice job on the terrible take that Dr. Mel did a few days ago, talking about the importance of the Shrine Bowl participants and the Steelers come draft day. So thank you, Mrs. Friedlander, for listening to the show there. Your daughter is amazing, does amazing work for the site there. Let's see, Mark Urbanak writes in, quick question. It's no secret that teams focus on beating teams within their division. With Cincinnati's recent success, do you think Cincinnati will be as much of a focus this offseason as Baltimore has always been? It seems like this could be a problem since offensively they have opposite philosophies, run versus pass. Look, I mean, I think every offseason you go into this thing, we know how important divisional games are, man. If you go 6-0 in your division, you're probably, if you don't win the division, you're probably still going to be in the playoffs. So, I think there's always a focus on all the teams in the division, because you play those teams twice. And yeah, I mean, you're not going to, you have to see Jamar Chase twice a year. So you better be prepared for that. And I don't think it's any I don't think there's any more focus now than in recent years. But I think the nameless gray faces have changed, as Mike Tomlin would like to tell you there. So, in other words, you better be prepared to defend against a guy like Jamar Chase for the next five to however many years.
Yeah, it sounds like he's saying the AFC North had been so run central, and now the Bengals are kind of opening up the passing game part of it. So you have to look at that a bit more, which means you need a really strong, outside cornerback. But that's true even with even if the Bengals didn't have Chase, because you're facing so many good receivers, even if it's just outside the
Brown,
division.
Mark Andrews. Geez.
Teams always have, good receivers, even again outside of the AFC North. So yeah, there's probably a bit of a shift, and you certainly focus on how your division is made up. But I think overall still, and the Bengals can run the ball as well, and their O line is going to improve this offseason, so their run game is probably going to improve as well. It's still a focus on stopping the run. But yeah, having that outside corner is going to be important, and that's important regardless whether the Bengals had Jamar Chase or not.
All right, I got one or two more in here, but let's table them to make sure we don't run this show too terribly long. Alex, we'll be back on Friday previewing the Super Bowl and all like that, and we'll have a lot more time to get to some of these reader emails. So within that, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, upright navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. For $25, you can have that version of the site as well. Thanks for everybody, all the guys for joining us today. Alex, thank you for the time that you put into this. And you and I will be back on Friday previewing the Super Bowl and all and talking more about the latest Steelers news that has come out. So in the meantime, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.